think probably the biggest success that has helped us is the ability to stop, take a step back, and ask a lot of questions. I wanted to nickname myself the Chief Kill Officer because I want to kill ideas that aren't going to help us move the needle. To really just understand why we're doing what we're doing has made me successful because I have been able to say that's not a great idea. What are the repercussions of that? I like to really figure out all the things that can happen. So what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case scenario? You're going to survive the worst that can happen. You should do it. Stop saying no.
Welcome to Trial Lawyer View, the podcast dedicated to the fierce yet compassionate lawyers who fight every day for justice in the courtroom. Our guests are top trial lawyers and their firms who share their stories and experiences, offering valuable insights into their journey, as well as expert guests who provide actionable strategies and practical tips for personal injury lawyers looking to optimize their operations, enhance client service, and drive growth in their practices. Trial Lawyer View is brought to you by Synergy. At Synergy, we aren't just a service provider. We are a strategic partner for personal injury law firms, seamlessly integrating with law firms to boost efficiency from day one. Outsourcing cumbersome administrative tasks like lien resolution and Medicare compliance to an expert partner like Synergy enables personal injury firms to focus on what they do best.
Welcome to the Trial Lawyer Review podcast. In this episode, I'm lucky to be joined by Kimberly Dube, the Chief Operating Officer of Rob Levine Law, a renowned personal injury law firm. Kimberly has been with Rob Levine for over 13 years, starting from the ground up, and is now instrumental in driving the firm's operational success. With a background in business management from Rhode Island College, she's played a crucial role in scaling the firm across diverse practice areas, including veterans benefits, Social Security, and personal injury law. In today's episode, Kimberly shares valuable insights on law firm operations, from tracking key performance indicators to scaling the firm and fostering firm culture. We also dive into how Kimberly has helped shape Rob Levine Law's growth, focusing on training, team development, and the importance of a leadership team. Today, we get a glimpse into her strategies as COO for optimizing law firm success in a competitive landscape. Kimberly, welcome to Trial Lawyer Review, and thank you for being with me today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the COO of Rob Levine Law, and I'm curious, because of your position that you hold, what are the key operational changes you've implemented that have had the most significant impact on the firm's efficiency and growth? Maybe the top five.
Top 5 things we've implemented. So I've been with the company for 14 years now. And when I started, there was only 16 of us, and we're at about 250 people today. So we've had significant growth over the little over a decade I've been there now. There's been several things we've put into place. The things that I think really stand out are probably the amount of contact our leaders have with the team. So we are doing weekly one-on-ones throughout the company, starting from the administrative assistants, legal assistants, case managers, attorneys, working up to management. Everybody has a one-on-one with their direct leader every week. So that communication has really helped to recognize what issues are going on in the company, whether that be how the processes work, just culture-wise, team member check-in. It's reduced turnover. I think that's really helped a lot as our weekly one-on-ones. Other operational excellence that we've built out are dashboards. So reporting is very important to me to see where the needle is. And with our dashboards, my job, right, is to never let the ball get stuck somewhere in that pipeline. So there's going to be places in every law firm where that happens and the pipeline gets clogged. That's going to be where your medical records are coming in and you're trying to move cases to demand to settle those cases. And it's going to be drafting settlement sheets at the end when you want clients to sign and get those funds in. So you have to always be looking at those types of places in order to move that needle. So dashboard design and build out is super important. So at any point you can hit a button and you can see where your law firm is today, right now, live. And then you can pivot and say, hey, I need to talk to this person. We need to do more of this. We need to do this. So that has been super helpful reporting wise with our dashboards. Additional things is training. So as cliche as training sounds, I've hired a lot of experienced case managers and attorneys and a lot of inexperienced case managers and attorneys. And with the experienced people that come in, they say, oh, wait, they hired me, they gave me a stack of work and told me to get to it. And I had no idea what I was doing. We don't do that. We spend a lot of time training, a lot of time asking questions, a lot of time ensuring that the team knows what they're doing and they're comfortable in it. And then ramping up what their workload is. So starting not at, 100 cases in the door and here's your pile of work. Good luck. We start at 20, 30, and we ramp you up so that we know how much you can handle and then what you can actually produce there. So that would be another item that has helped significantly. And then culture. So culture is tough in a remote environment. We had been up until COVID, obviously, in person. And we thought you had to be there, you had to be with your team, you had to be in the same office, you had to be talking. But COVID changed that. You couldn't do that. So we pivoted. We started outsourcing because it was hard to find people working during COVID as well. And the culture piece, that's where the one-on-ones came in. So you're meeting somebody weekly that is above you, that has done the job for, 5+ years, that can answer your questions, that can just ask you, hey, how are you today? And get you on the right path. That has been a great deal. So we train, we have a training academy, you graduate, you take both self-guided tests and you take actual written tests that your facilitator says, all right, here's 20 questions on what we learned in the past 2 weeks. Give me the feedback. What did you learn? Where's my team not grasping it? What do I have to go over again? I think training has been a big part of culture, and that has helped lower our attrition rates and really helped bolster our success.
Yeah, some really key points there. What struck me was the language you started using when you were talking about the firm, talking about it as the company, which I think frequently, we normally have on the podcast guests who are trial lawyers. Rob, as you know, was on the podcast previously. And I think frequently Rob's the exception and some others, Mike Morse is another exception, but most trial lawyers, I think, look at their firms as a practice. They may not evaluate the company as a company. And what you've identified is such an important part of really looking at how you optimize a personal injury practice. I'm curious, from your perspective, what would you say to a law firm owner that perhaps doesn't have a COO, maybe doesn't have a firm administrator, how to get their hands around making sure that the things, at least the basics, obviously you got into a lot of things that perhaps the average law firm may not have the resources to do like you do. So what would you recommend, and how do they get started down the path of making sure that they look at ways to be operationally efficient and, importantly, profitable?
Sure. So currently we run some consulting. So I've met with some small law firms and I've met with their COOs and or just the general business owner, the attorney themselves. I think the first thing, if you're looking to scale, so if you're just looking to run your law firm as a lawyer and not really build wealth and grow it, that's one area. If you're looking to grow your law firm and run it operationally as a business, is to take a step back and try to figure out the things that, one, you're really passionate about. So if you're a trial lawyer, that's what you want to do, you want to run trials and you want to win cases, then you have to figure out what things you're doing every day in the business, which is where you're probably spending a lot of time in the weeds, going over finances, to try to outsource. And if that's somebody fractional that's coming in and helping you organize those types of things, but you're going to be more successful and happier doing what you want to do instead of doing what you don't want to do. And a big thing in organizations when I dig in and I ask questions is, if you're not good at saying the finance piece, or you're not good at the reporting piece, there's things that are going to really bite you in the butt coming down the road. You're going to get audited by the bar. You're going to be missing, you're going to have checks that are outstanding. You're going to have things that are just missing if you're not taking a step back and looking fully. And that I think would help. Another probably good thing to get into if you're trying to figure out your operational excellence is leaning on like a mastermind group or a consultant that has, you don't want to say you're a cookie cutter business, but you want to have a business plan. And a lot of lawyers, doctors, things like that, they go to school to learn the law. They go out, they hang their shingle, they start practicing law, but they've never run a business before. So what are your plans? So, okay, 2025, what do I want to make profit-wise? Do I want to be 5% profitable or 30% profitable? How much money do I want to make? And setting that goal at the beginning of the year helps you put in place what you need to do to get there by the end of the year. So I would probably really start with a good business plan as to what my expectations are for my firm. And then you can fill in everything. You can start adding marketing, you can start adding people, you can start scaling. But if you're not thinking that way and you're just coming in and every day you pick up a file and you're just working on that case, you're missing out on the growth. So it depends on what you want to do. And then you can figure it out from there using some of those things. So either a consultant or just coming up with your business plan and setting goals for yourself.
Yeah, some great suggestions. A fractional CFO, if you don't have someone in place that's actually looking after all of the financial performance numbers, that's probably a pretty key thing in the mastermind stuff. I know what you guys do and others is an incredible way for law firm owners to connect with others and get best practices and learn. And I know, from my own experience in running a business, that's such an invaluable asset to have to help you really make sure that you don't lose the forest for the trees when you're involved in your own business, because not seeing those things, it could be very dangerous.
Correct. Yes. And I've been through several audits with different bar associations. And when it happened maybe 10 years ago, it took me maybe, 4 months to complete it. And they do them they're random audits every like 3 or 4 years. So I've done 2 since the first one. And because I was able to add a CFO and really work with my bookkeeper during that first one to say, hey, this is what's going to happen if we ever have another one. The second 2 maybe took me 2 days. And I was able to produce everything that was necessary. And here's our clean documents. Here's everything that you need, and out the door. So coming up with processes also really helps when those things come through the door. But learn from me. Well, the first time we got that letter, I said, oh, what is this? And I had to figure it all out. But once you get there, it's much easier.
So you mentioned dashboards, which I presume that ties into the KPIs that you track and measure for success of operations for the firm. How have you identified the right metrics? And then how do you ensure that those metrics align with your overall firm goals?
That's a great question. So the metrics have to be modified from time to time. But to give you like general examples on how many cases I think we should be settling a month. So that's really just directly tied to income. How many cases do we need to settle? How much do I need to make? And so historically, I go through all of the data. What was the best month per attorney? What percent of their negotiation pool were they able to settle in any month? What was the worst month we had? And then look through those months. What was happening? Were we short-staffed? Were we staffed correctly? And come up with a percentage of what your average performer should be able to do. And that's really the minimum standard. So all of your attorneys should be able to settle 20% of their negotiation cases every month. If they've got 10, they should settle 2. If they've got 50, you go down that route. So that's where I set that. For other things, because we really have KPIs for the entire soup to nuts is what I call it, front to back. And I have how quickly we have to report that case, how quickly we have to establish liability. But then you have to talk to your team members. Do you think this makes sense? Because some things change. So I've always had a set number of days liability should be accepted throughout every state that we practice in. However, in the last couple of years, Massachusetts has been running into some issues. So the state police, I think they're behind on just giving you police reports by 30 days. So I can no longer hold my team that establishes liability to 16 days if they're taking 30 days just to get the police report. So you have to then talk to your team and pivot and say, okay, these are the outliers. We're not going to consider anything that was Massachusetts state highways. Those aren't in this because they're an anomaly until Massachusetts figures out what's going on with their police station. So you have to look historically at what your best performers were able to do, what your worst performers were able to do, where that average is, and set a minimum standard for all of your team members. And then you really have to talk to the team, because sometimes you give the goals out and they're like, oh, easy, I can do that. And you're like, well, all right, we're going to see that for 3 months. And then maybe we can increase it. Or they all look at you like, you're insane. I'm not going to be able to settle 10 cases next week. That's never going to happen. So I like the transparency and just saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking, because we need to make money this month and to, continue to grow and to continue to pay all of you. I need X. How do you think we're going to get there? And having that conversation, they have buy-in. They're in it with you. You're in the same boat. How are we getting there? So I would look historically. I would come up with some averages. I would set that as a benchmark. And then I would talk to the team to make sure that they're bought in and believe that they can hit that. And for the KPIs, in addition to setting just historical goals for everybody throughout the whole line of the case, I set 2 or 3, depending on the role, in the whole list of where their case goes on what makes the firm money or what can make the firm more money. And with those KPIs, then they can get a bonus. So say I'm saying you can draft this many demands, you can draft this many settlement sheets, and you're medically managing well. So what's the average fee? As the attorney's average fees go up, we can increase their commissions because they're bringing in more revenue for the firm. So some of those KPIs are also built into an incentive for the team members so that it's a win-win for everybody. And they can see directly how their input is helping the law firm be successful, and then they in return are becoming successful.
Curious, do you guys look at time on desk? So how long it takes from hiring to the actual closing of the case and what accelerates that time frame? Because one of the things that we talk to law firms about with what we do is looking at their time frame from the time the case settles to disbursement, because a bottleneck there is lien resolution, which is what we do. And typically outsourcing that function allows for acceleration or improvement of those timeframes. So if it's, even 5 days, you pick up, obviously, if you look at your process from start to finish, that broader time frame, finding days to accelerate the resolution of cases. Is that something that you guys measure or look at in any way?
Yes, we look at it. I really look at it in the time on desk overall for both pre-litigation and litigation cases, but then I break it down into the buckets is what I would probably call it. So the status of where the cases are. So we have little triggers on if it's treating for too long. So if this isn't treating for 4 months and it's a soft tissue case, why is this case still here? And then my managing attorney is super tight on those cases in negotiation. This case has been in negotiation for 120 days. We don't have an offer on it. Are they gonna make an offer? Do we need to file suit on this? What do we need to do with this? So yes, we look at it overall, and then we break it down by the individual status of where those cases are. And then I set some pretty lofty goals. We've had a lot of demands throughout the year that haven't been moved. So I really created a team to resolve a lot of cases from October to December, and there's 2 people on each side, one on the case management side, one on the records side, working together. And their goal is to reduce our DP number by, I think they looked at me like it was doable and I might be a little crazy. So we're going to continue to monitor it and update it if I need to, but I gave them a pretty lofty goal to start 2025 successfully.
I'm curious because I know Rob's got the records on time solution for medical record retrieval, and solutions like us, which are an outsourced lien resolution type of solution. How important is it for your team to look at the components of what they do and find ways to execute on some type of strategy, like using or creating, like Rob did, a medical records retrieval solution that actually is usable and functional and helps the team improve by outsourcing something that is better left to others?
Yes. I mean, when I meet with some smaller law firms, that's where people are really getting stuck. They're getting stuck in gathering medical records. It's just a pain in the butt to be calling and calling and calling. So to answer and figure out when you need those types of things. It really is, again, looking historically to figure out where we should be and where we are now and where are we getting stuck. So we've changed things several times, and we used to have, it was like a cafeteria style. So you came in the law firm, there was a team that reported it, and there was a team that worked on liability and property damage. There was a medical record team. There was a case management team that talked to the client. And then there was the attorney that settled the claim. And then there was somebody else that did the settlement sheet. And we kept having a ton of issues with the settlement sheets because people were missing stuff. They didn't know the case. They were just going through it quickly. They'd miss a lien here, and then they'd miss a bill here. And then, 2 yeyears later, you'd come back and you'd owe $1,000 to this radiology place. And you'd say, how did this get missed? So I came in and took, after I probably had like 3 of those in, 2 weeks. And I said, that's enough of this. How did this happen? We're going to switch it up. And we changed it to, there's just one team that handles the property damage, and then the other team handles everything. So they're talking to the client, they're requesting the records and reviewing them, but then that's outsourced. So they say, I need all the records from ABC Hospital, this doctor, that doctor for these dates. That team is working, calling, spending their time on the phone. And the case manager is focusing on getting that client better, making sure that they've done everything they need to, and reviewing the liens as they come in. They're doing that in addition to looking at those medical records. So at the end, that lien doesn't have anything on there that's not related because they've been working it through the case. And then they're able to draft that settlement sheet, not miss anything, because they know the 10 places the client went because they've been talking to the client for the last 9 months. So I changed that. So really looking at taking a step back and saying, why do these problems keep happening? What could we be doing better? Helps you come up with some better solutions.
So you had mentioned when I was asking you at the outset about the key things that you think are part of the operational efficiency and how you guys have made gains for the firm. One of the things you mentioned was culture. I'm curious, what steps do you take to foster a positive, productive, and client-focused environment within the firm that produces those successful outcomes and then leads to really good Google reviews? Because I know from my own experience here at Synergy, one of the things that we do is really focus on our mission and illustrating for our team the importance of what they do every day, how it impacts the injured party when we're able to get a lien completely waived or greatly reduced, and all those things. And that part of our culture is really important in the way it motivates our team. So I'm just curious what you've done in that regard to help in your position as COO.
Sure. So we started and speaking to different size law firms, when you're small, when I first came in and there were 16 of us, culture was easy. We used to be able to go out to dinner together, hang out. I knew everybody's mom, dad, whatever, kids. As we grow, once you get to 50, 100, it's still okay to have like one holiday party and you can kind of mix and mingle. But now at the level we are, where we have team members throughout the country and outside of the country, that's not really possible anymore. So years ago, we started with one of the consultants that we are with. They do a survey. So their first thing is, we're going to introduce ourselves to your company and we're going to do a survey and see where you are, like what your team thinks about you. And it's completely done anonymously. So you can kind of figure out sometimes when people put very direct comments, who wrote the comment, but the overall answers, it's, a scale of 1 to 5, and you can get the pulse of the company. It's about 100 questions. And you can come up with that and see where you're really falling down or what you're doing really well. And then after we did that survey, we enlisted the team. So we have an advisory board is what we call it. And the advisory board is made up, I believe there's 6 people on it currently, because we rotate people out. You've been on it for a year, bring some new blood in type of things. They come up with things that they would like to see. So a book club, and if you're interested in the book club, you can meet on Tuesday nights. They do trivia, which becomes very cutthroat. And there are some great people at trivia, and they're on there arguing with each other. And then we do quarterly all company in huddles, and we always have prizes and we play a little game. It could be trivia. It could be, Halloween costume, ugly sweater, those types of things that get people engaged. And then we do the survey now has been, I think we've probably done it 4 times at the law firm, and we're going to start just doing it annually because obviously we want to continue to improve. So that's what we've done. We've got the team that helps come up with ideas, and they're also champions when we make changes. Like if we're changing everything has to go through Teams. Some people are using WhatsApp, some people are texting, some people downloaded Slack. So there's lots of communication pieces. We're switching it. Everything's got to go through Teams if it's not an email. So the advisory board's, okay, we get it. We understand it. We're going to champion it. We're going to be the ones speaking about it. We're going to make sure everybody's in Teams. So enlisting the team that works for you has been very successful for us in helping move the culture needle and really just having a conversation of what our culture looks like. And we had assistance from that. It was a different team at that time, but come up with a vision and mission that went with Rob's vision, but also reflected how the team feels and how they love to help people and really be the champions for injured and disabled people, really all worked together.
One of the things that you had mentioned as well was training and development. And you talked a little bit about your program, but I really wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to get your insights about what you believe is most effective about what you've built in training new team members, since you've got various departments, various practice areas, and then ensuring ongoing professional development for your team.
Sure. So great questions. And for training, we've played with training lots of different ways over the years. And now that we've grown pretty large, we run an outsourcing company as well. So the outsourcing company trains all of our legal assistants that are internal and all of our internal case managers. Depending on their role, the legal assistants get about 4 weeks of training. The case managers get around 12, maybe 13, depending on how quickly they're picking things up or how much they need to re-review. So they are really in just a bubble. And that's instructor-led training and self-guided training. So if, depending on your size, if you're a smaller law firm, probably doesn't make much sense to build out a whole training library and get a training HRIS system and pay for that module every month. You probably just want to have some sort of SharePoint that has all of the resources that you want somebody to have at their fingertips to look something up. But if you're a larger firm, I would certainly encourage you to have that training module inside of your HRIS system. We use Paylocity, and it can store all of the scores for people historically. They can go in, and if they need a refresher or they just want to look something up, everything's there. It's searchable. It makes it awesome. So that's the initial training. Then when they leave the initial training, they've been certified that they understand everything they need to do as a case manager or a legal assistant. They then go to their division. And in each of our divisions, we have an individual trainer. That person is there for new hires coming in. So once they come into the firm, they start working their cases with them, making sure they understand it. And then that person, when they don't have a new hire, is doing exactly what you just said, which is the additional training. So our team leads are pretty granular on the performance of their team members. So if they notice that John and Susie are both having issues drafting settlement sheets, they're just having an issue, confirming balances, they'll mark that down for a couple of weeks, and then the trainer will come in and do a training and pick all of the people that are having that issue and retrain them on it, make sure that they understand it, give them some real life examples, have them go through some things with them, and then release them back to their team lead and say, okay, they've completed this 3 days of X training. They got a 95 on their test. I believe that they're retrained and able to do it. So let me know how it goes. And then they communicate. So we have a trainer in each of our divisions plus an extra one in the call center. That's how we are continuing. And then learning and development also does some, if there's like a customer service. So I was going through some notes and I saw some text messages that is not the way you'd want to communicate with a client. So I said, oh, if this one's doing it, there's lots of people saying, hey, what's up to our clients? And I'll just some very slangy type of things. So I had training and development, put a customer service, how to text, how to talk, how to be professional training. And everybody had to go to that. And we break it up in different hours. So we still have people on the phone and everything's running operationally, but we've got people in different training classes. So just paying attention to what you see, what you don't like, and making sure that you address it with everybody and then it's understood how you want things to go.
The key that I think you mentioned is process and infrastructure and some sort of a system for making sure that you've got that ability to train people in the methods that you want to make sure they utilize in delivering the services to the end client.
Right. It's the training and the process, and then it's the monitoring, because you can train somebody and they've been with you for 10 years, and every time they've done this, they hit button A, and that's what you want them to do. And then 11 years, they start doing button B, and you're like, hey, John, you've been here a decade. Why'd you start hitting button B? Can you please go back through this training and understand why it's important and why we do what we do? So it's putting the process out there and then really monitoring it. And you have to pivot and make changes as you grow, as you shrink, as the market changes. It's really important to just keep looking at things and not, a lot of people think if it's not broke, don't fix it, or we do it this way, so I'm just going to continue to do it that way. But with technology and AI coming in, there's so many opportunities to do things differently and quicker and more efficiently. So you have to be able to really pivot and think what we can do with these different pieces that come up.
Well, good segue, because I was going to ask you how you guys have leveraged technology to streamline what you do at the firm and improve client service, and if there's any tools or systems that you would identify that have contributed to further efficiency within the firm.
Yes. The biggest bang for our buck, I would say, was our integration in our call center. So when our call center manager came on board probably 8 years ago, we had maybe a team of 8 people answering the phone. And all the phones rang and whoever was available answered it. And we had lots of people not answering the phone. So there was missed calls. There was lots of opportunity to just sweep the floor and make money, right? Because we're just dropping stuff on the floor. We're not picking it up. So we enlisted both our case management software and our phone company, which we had to leave, which was a challenge for both my call center manager and I, because we had the person that ran our phones, cell phone numbers, 3 a.m. There was a problem with the phones. He was there helping us. So leaving the mom and pop that we'd known for, 10 years to go to a big corporation. So we chose RingCentral because they really had all the capabilities that we needed. We worked with RingCentral and Smart Advocate and married those two. So what RingCentral does is it data dips every time the phone rings. And it identifies, is this a client or is this a potential new client? And that's really where it starts. If it's an existing client, the Smart Advocate system tells what status it is. Okay, this case is in negotiation. That call has to go to that attorney on that case, and it goes to that attorney. If it's a new client, it recognizes that, pushes that to the call center, and we have it really prioritized by importance, which is what's the biggest case. So PI will get answered before Social Security or a veteran's case because it has the highest potential value. So if everybody's on the phone and somebody hangs up, the PI gets delivered to that person first. In addition to that, if you call our office and it rings more than twice and you hang up, we automatically call you back and say, hey, you just hung up. Did you mean to hire us? Because they're just going down the list of attorneys near me, right? So we call them back, and we've retained a lot of cases that way. So that's been a game changer. In addition to those things, every form fill that comes in, we used to have help at roblevine.com, and 20 people in the call center would get the email and they'd all respond, calling now. We don't need to do that anymore. It goes right into Smart Advocate. It populates, it pulls the screen up, and it gives it to the next available call center person. So they're never not on the phone. They're always answering the next call, either outbound or inbound, and they're constantly just turning cases. We used to open 400 cases a year when we probably started doing this. 400 cases a month. We're opening about 1,000 cases a month now. So it has really increased our ability to manage a large team. I think there's about 45 people in the call center now, not obviously working all at the same time, but working the 7-day schedule, 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. And we are opening more cases than I could have ever imagined. So that was probably a great thing, was that integration. And we just started using Hona, which I'm not sure if you've heard of Hona, but it's like a Domino's pizza tracker for your case. And it gives the client, it's just, you get a text message and you click on it on your phone and it pops up and it shows you where your case is. Okay, my case is in treating. And it tells you what to do. There's a little video from Rob, and Rob says, hi, I understand you're in treating. The most important thing is for you to get better. We handle everything. Any doctor's appointment, tell us about. If you're having this, tell your doctor so that they can, get you more testing or talk to you more about it. You're your advocate at the doctor. So these are the things you have to focus on. Then under that, if you don't want to watch a video, you have all the frequently asked questions. And then that also drips text messages. So as we're going through things and say it's a negotiation for 90 days. Nope, we're still working on your case every 15 days. No updates yet. We're still working, no updates yet. So there's just constant communication. They can text back, obviously. They can submit pictures. They can submit forms. That has been pretty cool. And I think we're at a utility rate of like 80% of our clients are engaging with that HONA tool.
Yeah, the use of technology to create transparency, we use that in our portal for clients that partner with us so that they can see where everything is in the life cycle of resolution, which really it's, using it on your side to make sure the client understands, what stage their litigation is a game changer. I know because having been involved in my own personal injury case, which unfortunately I learned the hard way, all the ins and outs of it after getting hit by a car while I was cycling here in Orlando. I didn't have that. Thankfully, I knew the process very well from having been involved in the personal injury space for, almost 20 years at that point. But, most lay people, and being a lawyer, but most lay people don't really understand what's going on. And having that sort of transparency and insight and keeping them informed is such a key thing.
Yeah, the number one issue you have is client complaints. They say, I don't know what's going on. They don't talk to me enough. So in addition to that tool, which is constant communication, lots of texting, we put in a report going back to dashboards that shows any client coming in, and it works with RingCentral. So it will see any client that's left us a voicemail. It identifies, yes, open client, yes, left a voicemail. Did it get called back within 24 hours? So 24 business hours. So we have a report, and it will show you cases that are coming up to 24 hours that haven't been returned. So if I'm a manager of the attorneys and I know all these clients need to get called back or they're going to go complain, I can say, hey, you need to call these 2 clients back before the end of the day. You need to call these 2 clients back before the end of the day. And we have a strict policy that every client that calls and leaves a voicemail needs to be called back within 24 hours. So that really technology worked there, because we would have never been able to identify all the voicemails left without having RingCentral.
So this next question is somewhat self-serving. We've kind of talked a little bit about this already, but being very mindful of looking at your processes, looking at ways to gain time efficiency. Part of that is outsourcing. Part of that is technology, looking at what you were just describing. How do you guys go about really digging down deep and evaluating what you're doing and how to leverage either outsourcing or technology to be able to implement? Is there a specific process that you engage in, or is it more just generally evaluating your metrics to see where you may be able to pick up time by leveraging either an outsourced partner or technology?
A lot of evaluation. Obviously, it has to financially increase our bottom line. We're never wanting to add something that doesn't. So we recently incorporated, which I can't really speak to because it hasn't launched yet, but we're in the process of incorporating AI for reading our mail, saving our mail, scanning it, putting it into the right files. And that was an evaluation. So I had to go in, I had to look at the cost. I had to look at the cost of the people that we're currently paying to do that and figure out if that made sense to start paying this third party to read our mail or have somebody sitting in the office read the mail. And the amount of manual problems that happen, I said, yes, we should probably automate this. It's never going to be in the wrong file again. Everything that doesn't get checked by AI goes into another folder that somebody has to manually check. So we're going to clean this up. And then I negotiated, obviously, and got it to where I needed it to be to financially make sense. And then on other things, you have to really compare. So with RingCentral, we looked at a lot of different phone softwares to see what could do it. We actually even hired a consultant that was an expert in integrations of phone software to figure out which one we should do. So you want to really read reviews, talk to peers, talk to competitors, and figure out what is the best fit for your needs. Some companies, like RingCentral, is the only one that did everything we could do. So it's expensive and you have to renegotiate once in a while, but it has all the capabilities that really will allow you to get to the next level.
In terms of your style of leadership and philosophies and practices, what have you adopted to help you as COO steer the firm towards long-term success? What's the most important thing that you're bringing to your position in terms of getting the firm on that scalable growth trajectory?
I think probably the biggest success that has helped us is the ability to stop, take a step back, and ask a lot of questions. And I have a few leaders. One just got called out at a big seminar we were on, and the person said, "I'm just going to call you questions from now on," because she just asks so many questions so that she fully understands what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. So I wanted to nickname myself the Chief Kill Officer, because I want to kill ideas that aren't going to help us move the needle. Not everybody was for it. Some people were, some people weren't. But to really just understand why we're doing what we're doing has made me successful, because I have been able to say, that's not a great idea. We shouldn't do that. What are the repercussions of that? So really taking a step back and being able to analyze it. I don't like to be the type that jumps and then looks. I like to really take a look, figure out, all the things that can happen. So what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case scenario? And if the worst case scenario is still a win, all day long, we're going forward with it. I do it with my 10-year-old. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to do the talent show. What's the worst that can happen? And if you're going to survive the worst that can happen, you should do it. Stop saying no. So I think I ask a lot of questions. I need to understand things. And I definitely want my leaders to do that. And really anybody that comes into play with the executive team, if we're hiring like an EA or something, I'm like, are you able to say no? Give me an example of that. Ask me more questions. And that is a good guide if they're going to work well or not. I don't need yes people. That's not the type of company I want to run.
Probably a good place to end, but I actually had one final question to ask you, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And this is completely open-ended. You can talk about something maybe we haven't talked about or whatever you want. And the question is, what's your view as the COO of a very large and successful personal injury firm?
My view is I'm impressed and blown away by the legal arena. I think there's so much more growth and excitement coming out of the area in which we are in. I'm excited. My biggest project for 2025 is to get away from lead sources and to really be able to bring in a lot more cases through different marketing, using TikTok and using Facebook, and just getting in front of more eyeballs at a lower cost per case. So I think it's super exciting to see the growth. There's some obvious setbacks. You got to look at autonomous cars and safer cars and really pivot and to be looking at other areas. That's why we have the Social Security and the Veterans Disability, which are scale. You have to really run a lot of those cases to be successful. But I would probably say that it's exciting as the COO in my role to see how far law firms have come and just to see the space that continues to grow and the competition. And it's pretty exciting. And as we're expanding geographically, I'm looking forward to 2025 to see what we're able to accomplish.
Yeah, lots of changes on the horizon due to technology, and even things like non-lawyer ownership of law firms. And what that means for private equity money coming in a bit, which it's done in the mass tort space. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues to evolve in 2025. But beautiful thoughts. Thank you. If anyone listening to this episode has questions about what you've talked about, particularly the masterminds and some of the things that Rob has as solutions, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Email is always the best. And that's just my first initial last name, kdube@roblevine.com.
Well, you've been an incredible guest today. Thank you. Appreciate the gift of your time today. And we'll see everybody on the next episode of Trial Lawyer View.
Here is another episode of Trial Lawyer View. We hope you enjoyed today's guest and discussion. Tune in to our next episode for more helpful insights from fellow trial lawyers and practice experts. This podcast is brought to you by Synergy. Visit partnerwithsynergy.com to learn more about how Synergy can free your firm to focus on what it does best.